So I've seen some discussions on Conor Benn and Matchroom re-emerge, and I think there was some great insight from Frank Smith, and I want to give the boxing philosophy perspective. So let's open that door. I'm going to explore 8 ideas. So Conor Benn is fighting Ryan Garcia, and therefore this conversation has come back up. So idea number 1, Conor Benn never sat down with Matchroom before leaving. He, according to Frank Smith, hid behind a few people and sent an email. Now, was this a business decision, or was it a calculated snub to dodge an uncomfortable conversation? This has been portrayed as betrayal, but it leads to some important questions. That important question is, or one of those important questions is, how important is loyalty? And should we be loyal to everyone? Or should we only be loyal to some selective people? How will other people look at Conor Benn with regards to this? So, for example, if you see someone being disloyal, will that impact not only your perception, but how you do business with that person? And if you're only supposed to be loyal to a chosen few, was Eddie Hearn part of that chosen few with regards to who Conor Benn should be loyal to? Here's an interesting question. When Conor Benn fights Ryan Garcia, if he loses to Ryan Garcia, let's say he's knocked out, will Zuffa be loyal? Or is it just business, and will they just simply separate themselves from Conor Benn? It's important because, with Conor Benn, and I'm not saying, I don't want to make assertions on people, because obviously we're looking at it from an outsider looking in, and I notice that a lot of people are just creating the narrative bias, he's a snake, and we don't know, but we can speculate and we can give our assumptions based on the information available. But one thing I can say about Conor Benn, he's improved as a boxer, I believe. But even though he's improved as a boxer, people seem to question his character. Not just because of the Eddie Hearn situation, but also because of the Chris Eubank situations as well. And in turn, Eddie Hearn has benefited because this whole interaction with Conor Benn has boosted his moral perception. One of the questions is, does this matter? Does this objectively matter? Does it matter if Conor Benn is loyal? Or does it matter if he's not loyal to Eddie Hearn? Does he only have to be loyal to his best friends and his family? Is Conor Benn an unethical person? Or is he just simply making a good business decision? Maybe Conor Benn has a great heart, or maybe he's a good person that made a bad decision. It's really hard to tell. I think from an outsider looking in, the information presented is this. Eddie Hearn put his credibility on the line by backing Conor Benn when there was a failed test. He could have walked away, but he didn't. He stayed with Conor Benn. Allegedly, there was additional financial help. So he stuck by him. And people look at that. And when there's a narrative that's constructed that not only did you walk away, you didn't even have a discussion with him, and you facilitated that discussion through an email, through a third party, people will look at that in an unfavorable light. And are people right to look at that in an unfavorable light? Does having integrity matter? Does it matter to deal with people in the right way? From my perspective, I think it's essential to deal with people in the right way. I think it's good to be good to people, especially people that are good with you. Of course, when you're dealing with a snake, that context changes. But people who stick by you, I think it's important to have a level of integrity. But it's an interesting situation. And it's going to be interesting to see how that situation unfolds. Now, the second idea is with regards to Anthony Joshua. And he is the only outside shareholder in Matchroom. No other fighter has ever been given that stake. And AJ, I guess, is not just a boxer. He is a true entrepreneur, building true generational wealth. And I think generally, Britain is proud of AJ. He is our rags to riches story. And it would seem when you look at, and AJ is very well media trained. You can see that in the way he answers questions. But he seems to be humble, and he seems to have become more spiritual, and he seems to have become even more likable. And AJ, and it's funny because you look at the perception of AJ and Conor Benn, and even though both of them are multi-millionaires, they both have very different perceptions, and that is based on the actions that they have taken. Idea number 3, AJ versus Fury is fully signed for the UK but still has 0 date. Is the delay strategic leverage or a sign that the biggest fight in British boxing is more fragile than the headline suggests? I think it's important to remember that the financial potential of this fight is absolutely ridiculous. The live gate of this fight is just going to be sold out. It's probably be sold out in minutes. The sponsorships are just going to be, how many millions upon millions are going to be the sponsorships? This is one of these things where you're going to fight to become a sponsor of this event, and the pay-per-view is just going to go through the roof. Everyone's going to want to have this fight. Everyone wants a slice of this AJ Tyson Fury pie. So this type of fight, it has massive significance in the UK, but it also has a massive significance to the world. AJ and Tyson Fury are huge brands, and when you combine those brands, you have absolute huge leverage. Idea number 4, Frank Smith says Conor Benn's exit will happen again. Matchroom has already accepted more fighters will leave for Zuffa money. You know, it's funny when we talk about this Conor Benn situation. Is it portrayal or is it business? And many people are moving to Zuffa boxing. I guess the difference is, like, Shakur Stevenson has signed a contract with Zuffa boxing. But did Shakur Stevenson have the same relationship with his previous promoters that Conor Benn had with Eddie Hearn? I think the issue that people have is that people perceive that Eddie Hearn showed this resilience, put his integrity on the line, put his credibility on the line, was really strong in his corner and really fought his corner. And I think when someone shows you that level of loyalty and then it's perceived as being just totally disregarded, I think within the British culture, that's not looked upon favorably. So for me, the lesson from the Conor Benn exit is not that he made an exit, it's how he made that exit. Had he had that conversation, had he split on amicable terms, he would have been perceived differently, or the level of resentment against him would have been less. Again, does that matter? Maybe it doesn't matter to him, but he could have maybe managed the situation better. Idea number 5, Matchroom, and this is a really important idea, which isn't discussed a lot. Matchroom risks 500k to 1 million every single week across a 40-show calendar. When it comes to business and when it comes to capitalism, not many people talk about the risks of a business. Value in business is based on what's made. Boxers get paid from the pot. So, and I'm using this figuratively. So the pot can be £100 or it could be £1 million. So depending on the pot that you have created, i.e. the brand that you have built, that will determine how much do you get paid. People want to get paid more, but have you built a big enough pot? So if you're only getting paid £2,000, that's because that's what the pot is worth. Let me explain this principle using a different platform. So the business entrepreneur and I guess hip hop icon DJ Vlad pays people for interviews. He's acknowledged this in a variety of discussions. So I'm going to create an imaginary premise here, but let's say if the interview makes £100, so you've created £100 pot and that gets split 50-50. That means that you're entitled to £50. But if the interview makes 10K, and when we say makes 10K, in this context, we're talking about Google AdSense revenue, then that gets split. So because now the pot is 10K, that means you're now worth 5K. And if the interview on Google AdSense makes 100K, or the sequence of interviews makes 100K, and it's a 50-50 split, now you're worth 50K. The point is this: if your interview creates a bigger pot, then you get more money from the pot. So for you to demand more money and for it to make any sense, you have to create a bigger pot. I think I got this pot analogy from the lead attorney, but it's a good way to explain it. Idea number 6, Zuffa is deliberately overpaying fighters short term, and this is going to crash purses long term. So, and the premise here is that the same model TKO ran on the UFC and WWE, and I guess that's a prediction. It may come true, it may not come true. You could actually make an argument that if Zuffa is offering more money, then the competitors need to offer more money to compete with Zuffa. But maybe Zuffa's pot, or it would seem that Zuffa's pot is bigger than everyone else's pots. So I don't know how that short term, definitely, if someone's offering more money, then that's good for the boxer, because that means that he can negotiate. So if someone offers him 5 million and then someone offers 10 million, well, then you could either take the 10 million or you can negotiate this 5 million to 7 million, 8 million, or even more. So short term, it's a benefit. How does it affect long term? Well, it really depends if Zuffa can maintain those type of deals. Will Zuffa go from offering 20 million to 5 million in 5 years? Who knows? It probably will be based on whether if they're recouping, based on their live gates, pay-per-view, sponsorships, broadcasting rights, etc., or how much financial leverage that they have. Who's to say? Idea number 7, Frank admits UFC doesn't want the fighters to be the superstars. This is really interesting, right? Because who should be the superstar, the platform or the boxer? Here's a good point. If the platform is the superstar and you fall out with the platform, what happens to you? Now let's put this in the Conor Benn analogy. Conor Benn is a boxing star. At the moment, he's the guy that everyone hates, but they will pay to see him lose. Maybe that's a little bit unfair. I would say that you can divide Conor's fan base into a few sections. There's the people that love him, maybe because of his father was a legend. Then there's people that just love him independently. And then there's people that don't like him, but they'll pay because they want to see him lose. So he'll have a variety of different people that will pay money to see him, whether that's pay-per-view or go to the events, etc. The point is this: Conor Benn is a celebrity. He is the A-side. But if Zuffa Boxing becomes the A-side and it becomes about the platform, as Zuffa Boxing evolves and gets more boxing real estate, how does that affect the relationship with Conor Benn? Does Conor Benn then become the B-side? And how does that affect his pockets? And that's a really interesting question. And does it really matter? Because Conor Benn knows that his financial window is short. So he's maximizing on his financial capacity. That's the right thing to do. So my criticism of Conor Benn isn't the decision to take the money. It's the process. It's the process of how he allegedly handled the Eddie Hearn situation. So going for the bigger bag isn't the problem. In capitalism, it's understandable to go for the bigger bag. Of course, the caveat is that not all money is good money. But how you handle relationships with people that treat you well, I think that's important, and that's a testament of your character. And maybe Conor Benn will be able to mend that relationship. Who knows? But what will be interesting is, will the Zuffa platform start to become bigger than the stars? Now for Conor Benn, because the boxing window of opportunity is so small, it may not affect him, but it can affect boxers down the line. And the eighth and final idea is that Dana White reportedly fixates on attacking Eddie Hearn specifically. Is Zuffa's obsession with Hearn actually about poaching fighters closer to him, like Benn? Now, Dana White is making chess moves. He's trying to build Zuffa, the platform. And the beef with Eddie Hearn is free promotion. I've said this time and time again. And if a promoter steals your fighter, in a sense, that gives you a good insight into that fighter. It doesn't mean that that fighter's a bad person, but it may reflect the relationship you have with that fighter, and it can give you some details and info. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. Of course, Conor Benn is worth millions. Dana White taking Conor Benn is a chess move. It's a Machiavellian move. It's a strategic move. It's a leverage move. But Eddie Hearn can then assess the Conor Benn relationship in a more appropriate way. And maybe this is a personal thing, but for me, and this is my personal perspective, I like to know who my enemies are, who my friends are, and who my acquaintances are. And I don't think, when you use the term enemy, what is an enemy? That's a good question, because I'm not sure if Conor Benn is his enemy. He might be an enemy in terms of when Matchroom are performing as trying to gain boxing real estate, then yeah, Conor Benn's an enemy because he's on the enemy stable. But I don't know if he's literally an enemy. I don't know if there's real hostility, but I'm not sure if there's a friendship either. Is he now an acquaintance? Probably not. But I think it's important to be able to properly label your relationships, because then you can act appropriately. Okay, so let's finish this with 5 questions. So question number 1, was Conor Benn's email exit purely business or a way to avoid an uncomfortable conversation? Conor Benn is a fighter that's very brave and courageous, so I don't know why he would avoid an uncomfortable conversation. Perhaps he's just made his business decision, he knows what's best for him, and maybe from his perspective, he feels that he will have that uncomfortable conversation later down the line. And with all said and done, hopefully they can repair that conversation, and hopefully there's not real hostility there, because that's never a good thing to carry. Question number 2, is AJ's ownership stake the real reason he's remained loyal to Matchroom? I'm assuming that the loyalty and the friendship and the business relationship was built first, and then the ownership stake came after. So it's like, yes, you're going to be loyal because you have some ownership in the company, but to get to having ownership, you would have to have gone through these stages of relationship building. So I'm not sure if that premise is entirely true, but the fact that AJ's willing to have that type of ownership means that he wants to be part of that company, and he wants to be part of that vision, and he represents their brands, he represents their values, etc. Question 3, is the Undated AJ Fury fight strategic leverage or a sign that the deal is still fragile? I'm not sure if fragile is the right word, and in my way of thinking, and I could be wrong, I'm assuming that many contracts may be undated in terms of where the fight will take place and when. And I'm assuming when there's millions on the table, you're going to get many different redrafts. So I think this might be industry standard. If that premise is true, then it's not fragile, because we all know that there's loads of money to be made. Question 4, is Zuffa overpaying fighters to grow boxing or to gain control of the market? Clearly, Zuffa is overpaying to leverage the credibility of these boxers. That's clearly a strategy. The question is, how long can they overpay for? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Is it 10 years? Surely there's not an infinite amount of money. And of course, when you invest a lot of money, there has to be a return on the investment. And the whole meritocracy of boxing that they're trying to promote, the culture of entertainment, some of their signings seem weird to me. For example, I love Shakur Stevenson, great boxer, but he's a defensive-minded boxer. So putting him into a platform where it's entertainment first seems like an unusual decision. However, they're leveraging his credibility and they're leveraging him as an A-side elite performer. Question 5. Finally, question 5. Does Zuffa want to defeat Matchroom, steal its biggest fighters, or eventually buy it? Clearly, in boxing, there's competition. Promoters are always battling other promoters. And in capitalism, there's competition, but competition is a good thing. Competition makes services better. So when people are competing with each other, the way to beat them, or one of the ways to beat them, is to create a better service. Clearly, Zuffa not only want to defeat Matchroom, they want to defeat all competitors. And therefore, maybe stealing their fighters is the wrong wording, because are you stealing a fighter? Stealing sounds like you're grabbing them or something. I mean, at the end of the day, they're entering a consensual contract where they're paid vast amounts of money. And the boxer can say no. They can say no. If they have that loyalty to the promoter, Conor Benn could have said no, but he said yes. But clearly, Zuffa Boxing they're in this boxing game, they're entering the boxing real estate to dominate boxing. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.